Okay, this video is about completing the square when the a value is not 1. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move the 15, the c value, over to the right side so it's out of the way. So you have 3x squared plus 12x. Let's leave a little blank for our new c value, and we have equals negative 15. Now, if your a value is not 1, so the number in front of x squared is 3, let's go ahead, if we can, and factor the 3 out. So we're going to factor the 3 out. So we have x squared plus 4x, let's leave a space, and equals negative 15. Okay, so now we're going to complete the square, and when we complete the square, we're just completing the inside of the parentheses right here. So we're not going to worry about the 3 quite yet. So we're going to complete the square by putting x squared in the top left box. Now the 4x has to be divided evenly, so it's a square between those two boxes. So it's 2x and 2x. So if you start to factor, this is x plus 2, and this is x plus 2. So the number that literally completes the square is 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, and so that 4, it needs to go right here. Now, to balance the equation, you actually are adding a 12 out to the side. And here's the reason. You don't technically have to write this out. But if you distributed the 3 back in, you have 3x squared plus 12x plus 12. So the number you're actually filling in that hole with is a positive 12. Okay, so we can then rewrite the left side. Instead of being x squared plus 4x plus 4, that's the same as x plus 2 squared. We still have the 3. And negative 5 plus 12 is going to be negative 3. Okay, so that's completing the square. We just did that. Now let's go ahead and let's try to solve. So before we can square root, you need to divide that 3 on both sides. So we have x plus 2 squared. And then you have equals negative 1. So now we square root it. And when we square root, we get plus or minus. And then the square root of negative 1 is I. Okay, now subtract the 2. So I get negative 2 plus or minus I. So my answers are... Okay, so on this problem number 2, I need to multiply the 6x throughout. I cannot go ahead and complete the square until it is in standard form. So I have 6x squared plus 12x. I'm going to leave a space and equals negative 42. Now we're going to factor out the 6 because it's the GCF. So we're going to have, in parentheses, the x squared plus 2x. And we still have the 6 outside, and the equals negative 42. Okay, so to complete the square, remember, you're just doing what's in the parentheses. So the x squared plus 2x. So the 2x, remember, you break up evenly into 2 parts. So now if we work towards factoring, we have x plus 1 times x plus 1. So the number we need to complete this square is 1 times 1. So that's a 1. Now remember, what we're actually doing, if you distribute that 6, we're really adding a 6. So we have to add a 6 to the other side to retain the balance. So we have the 6, and then we have the parentheses is x plus 1 squared, and then negative 42 plus 6 is negative 36. Okay, so that's completing the square. Now solve by square roots. Get this squared by itself, so divide by 6. You need the parentheses squared alone. So we have x plus 1 squared equals, and that's negative 6. So now we square root. So we get x plus 1 equals plus or minus I square root 6. So then we subtract the 1. So that's x equals negative 1 plus or minus I square root 6. Your two solutions are negative 1 plus I square root 6 and negative 1 minus I square root 6. Okay, so on the monitoring progress, number 1, there is no the coefficient, the a value in front of x squared is just 1, so it's easier to do. So we're going to go ahead and move the 8 over by subtracting 8. Now there's no GCF to factor out, so I can go straight to completing the square. So to complete the square by x squared minus 4x, you just divide that 9 minus 4x into the 2 boxes evenly, so it's a square. So that becomes x minus 2 and x minus 2. So the number needed to complete this square is positive 4, and I get that by taking negative 2 times negative 2. So I add the 4 to both sides. So this becomes on the left x minus 2 squared, and on the right equals negative 4. Okay, so now solve by square roots. We square root both sides. So x minus 2 equals plus or minus 2i. Add the 2, and we get x equals 2 plus or minus 2i. So your answers are 2 plus 2i and 2 minus 2i. Okay, on number 2, the a value is -3. So before you factor it out, go ahead and add the c value, the 6, to the other side. So you have -3x squared minus 18x equals 6. So now factor out the -3. So we have x squared plus 6x, leave the space, and then equals 6, and then we have this -3 on the outside that we just factored. Okay, so we're going to find the number that completes the square of x squared plus 6x. So we're going to break that into x squared and plus 3x and plus 3x. So that's going to be x plus 3 and x plus 3. So the number that completes that square is 9. So we're going to put a 9 here. Now what we're actually adding out there is not just a 9, okay? We have -3 times 9, that's -27. So it's really a -27 to complete the square, so that's why we have to put that on the outside. So that's -3, and then we have x plus 3 in parentheses squared, and then 6 minus 27 is -21. Okay, so to solve, we divide by -3 on both sides. So we get x plus 3, parentheses squared, equals 7. Now we square root, so x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. Now we're going to subtract our 3, so we get -3 plus or minus the square root of 7. And we could turn that into a decimal by putting in our calculator -3 plus the square root of 7 and -3 minus the square root of 7, and that would be our two answers. Or we can leave it here in simplified radical form.